That's right, folks. Another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, and we're here to bring you another way too early mock draft, breaking down round two. Key players like Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara are all still available. Who should go at 1.13? Let's talk all about that and more on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, starting right now.
What up, Razzballers? Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, Sky Guasco, joining us for another evening of the Quad Box here on the Razzball Fantasy Football YouTube show, and of course, streaming thereafter on the podcast as well. Joined by all three amigos this evening. We've got Matty Styles up at the top, back out of vacation. Really stoked after an incredible performance by one Jordan Love, possibly the best Packers quarterback in history. I think that's no question. Bob Lamarco in the back corner there. Bobby Lamarco, Lamarco. And, of course, the best shortstop on the panel, Derek _Favret here as well with a backhand, a little glove side backhander. Love to see that. You can find Styles at Styles08, myself, Sky Guasco, SkyGuasco. Everything Razzball on Twitter, Razzball, RAZZBALL, NFL. And, of course, you can leave a comment right here on the YouTube channel. Leave a mark and let us know how you're feeling about your mock drafts. We talked a lot. Matt and I jumped on Sunday morning before the games, and we talked a lot about the wild card matchups. We talked about my top 24 personally. So viewers and listeners have an idea of where I sit, but it's important that we bring back all the perspectives. So Matty has an idea, but Bob and Derek haven't seen those rankings yet. So we're going to be debating the second round specifically. For those of you that weren't with us last week, we only did round one. So Matt was out. Bob and Derek and I did round one only. And I'm going to recap for you on that quickly. And then we're going to let Matt kick off round two. And then we'll go to myself, Bob, and Derek. We'll each have 3 picks. And we're going to be debating those along the way. And, of course, we'll recap it there. So it's important that we break it down with the whole round here to give some perspective. Per usual, this is redraft content. Make sure you hang out with our friends, the Dynasty Diehards, on Wednesdays, who are breaking down Dynasty content for the offseason. But we're focused on redraft here. This is a single quarterback, full PPR league. Of course, full PPR, the only setting worth playing. I think Bob would agree with that. Before we get into it, I want to check in with the boys quickly here. Matty, you weren't here last time. You've had just a little bit here to kind of digest this first round. I'm sure you don't agree with necessarily every single pick. So before we get into your actual pick, I'm curious if there's one player in this round here that stood out to you that maybe you wouldn't have in your first round, or you're surprised not to see a certain name in the first round here so far.
The number 9 pick is nowhere close to a first rounder, in my opinion. His ceiling is, but what I saw at the end of the year, Devon Etienne is not worthy of a first-round pick, in my opinion. And I did a mock super flex draft today, and he went in the late 4th round. So that just pushes my opinion to a stronger place for me. And I say shame on Derek. You know better. You should not have drafted a running back of his caliber that early. But no fingers to be pointed.
Except for that one.
Yeah, that was me.
Which actually I didn't make the pick, but
no, that was
who was it?
That was me. That was me. We've mixed up the draft order intentionally, Matt, to re-include you here because we're nice.
Because we show up, Matt. Because we show up. You're here throwing out shade. If anybody should be pointing fingers, it should be us. We had to do a tri-box. We couldn't even do any sexual music throughout the pod because we didn't have a quad box. You'd be ashamed of yourself. How about that?
Yep. Yeah. So it starts. Derek, apologies to you. Sky, you know better. Bob, I'm not going to even talk to you about it.
I wouldn't either.
Daniel threatened to leave the show last week because we didn't have any 4 quad box tunes, but hopefully this week we'll get it back here. We'll see. I'm going to save my thoughts again on HN. We'll go through with it. In short, if Mostert isn't Mostert, I think he's a top 10 pick. That's my clear distinction there. Matt, the shouts out to our friends over at CBS and our good friend of the show here, Heath Cummings, for the invite. I believe that was also a dynasty mock draft. Is that correct?
Correct. And again, HN going in the fourth was a little bit concerning for me. So
Yeah.
And by the
And
way, I didn't
flexible.
realize it was dynasty till like round 6. So
No worries. It is a mock draft. That's why we do it. But
Yeah.
being a super flex and a dynasty might push him down a little bit. We shall see. Bob and Derek, I'm going to get to you as well before we let Maddie kick it off. Again, everybody tuning in here. We got the full quad box. Make sure you give a like and a follow, subscribe, and leave a comment below and let us know. You can see on the screen there what our top 12 picks were from last week. And you'll see, again, the top 12 picks coming up here shortly. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Let us know in the chat. And, of course, we'll bring it up here live. Bob, I'm going to start with you. Derek, I'll go to you next before we get to Matt's first pick of the second round. Bob, recapping this first round, we talked about it last week, but in short, same question to you. After a week of digesting here, is there one name that you would take out of your top 12? Is there a name that isn't in our first round that you would auto pick in the top 12? Just one guy here, either in or out of our top 12 from last week.
Yeah, I just want to first open up, and I realize that, when I say 1.13, what I really meant is 2.1. Obviously, one day, there will be a day in the near future where I get an intro 100% correct. Until that day, you're just going to have to accept me for who I am. I'm a hot mess on those intros. Anyway, I will say that the Bijan Robinson situation is probably the most interesting because who's going to be the head coach? Like Belichick's getting interviews there. Belichick seems a little bit, we'll see. I mean, I think you would hope Belichick will just go all in on Bijan and give him the full workload. But it'll be nice to see who lands there as the offensive coordinator for that team because, Bijan's got all the talent in the world. And without Arthur Smith kind of messing around, the sky's the limit for him. So he could definitely be a lot higher once we know who the coach is going to be.
Love it. Derek, same question to you, bud. One of these top 12 you would take out after the fact, or somebody maybe that we didn't even mention in your top 12?
Yeah, actually, I want to give some love to the three of us who made these picks. I did an article that came out on Monday about efficiency.
Really good picks. I agree.
Yes. I did an article on player efficiency, and when I looked at running backs, only 4 running backs this season surpassed 25 fantasy points in 25% or more of their games. Of course, McCaffrey, Kyron Williams, Etienne, and Breece Hall. So good job picking, guys. We hit all the studs in this first round. We did a good job, even without Matt.
I love it. And a name right off the bat, Matt brings it up, and I said this when I drafted him at 9. Etienne is definitely the most risky pick in the first round for sure. We'll see what happens. I had just brought up a couple of his metrics, right? Like per game basis, in only 10 games, he was still upper echelon. And if he didn't miss 5 to 7 games or not play partially, he could be top 5, and it may not be a question. And then we'll see what happens with Mostert. He's 32 years old. See what happens with his offense. So that's why I had him there. But a lot to be discussed, of course, in the first round. We're going to go into our second here shortly as well. Matt, I'm going to give you 2 more seconds to gear up and see who you got. Once again, everybody, this is redraft single quarterback. So as you can see, no quarterbacks drafted yet. In a super flex, we'd have probably 3-4 off the board at least already in the first round. But this is redraft, full PPR, single quarterback. Matt, you are on the proverbial clock. Turning it back around here, we're not looking at individual rosters right now. This is basically setting ECR here at Razzball and also kind of ADP early. So don't worry about you already have a wide receiver. You don't. You're just picking first pick of the second round here. Go after it, my man. Who you got in the first pick of the second round?
Draft this guy button. I have found the player. Don't know how to do it here on.
It's all right. If you don't got it, I'll do it for you. Who you got?
Just say the name. I already have it up. I'm controlling the screen, Matt. Just say the name and I'll put it in for you.
I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor.
Oh.
Yeah, I believe that he is a better player when Anthony Richardson is at quarterback. And I think that it was kind of a lost season for him with the first 4 games and then getting dinged and then Zach Moss being really good. So for me, it's Jonathan Taylor. I know we're not supposed to play off of the picks that we had before, but with A.J. Brown forced on me, I was not going to go with a second receiver based on the names that have already gone off the board. So give me the guy that I think is the top running back. The coin flip for me it wasn't really a coin flip, would have been Saquon, but I don't think Saquon is going to be with the Giants. So I think he's going to have to carve out a role someplace else, which may make him actually more valuable, but he's going to have to learn a new system, a new OC, probably, a new locker room, new head coach, all of those things. So give me Jonathan Taylor in a more concrete situation.
Love it.
You got it. I like it. Jonathan Taylor's a great pick. Matt, you and I did my top 24 review on Sunday, and we discussed a little bit. I have Jonathan Taylor as my 19th pick overall. Right here, he would be 13th off the board. Again, a lot of this is going to shake out over the summer. I just have questions about this offense with Anthony Richards. I have questions about Zach Moss and how he returns with this offensive line. Quentin Nelson coming back healthy, what they're going to do with this offense, and Shane Steichen and everybody else here with Indianapolis. So a little bit concerned, not concerned. I have question marks with the offense. So Jonathan Taylor would be a little bit further behind my pick here at 2-2, and that is going to be Alvin Kamara, one of my favorite players in the NFL, one of the most steady fantasy running backs in general over the last handful of years, and certainly somebody that I can count on in PPR leagues as well. I'm going to take him at 2-2 here, ahead of Jonathan Taylor. He led running backs in receptions with 75. I mentioned this on Sunday, but for anybody that wasn't paying attention there or didn't tune in, his first 3 seasons in the NFL, folks, he had 81 receptions, absolutely dominant out of the backfield. He had 75 and he missed 3 games. He definitely blows that out of the water should he play all 3. And again, remember, he was suspended. He wasn't injured. So an injury-free season for Alvin Kamara. Love to see that. RB3 in PPR points per game, just 6 touchdowns. He's been over double digits multiple times in his career. I think he gets back over double digits in this offense. 1,100 total yards. I know we all like Kendre Miller potentially. We'll see what happens with Derek Carr and everybody else in that offense there. Taysom Hill's getting older, though. I think they stopped using him as much because he got injured down the stretch. So I think one more year, they're going to run until the wheels come off with Alvin Kamara. He's also 28 with Christian McCaffrey in that amazing draft class. So for me, I'm actually getting value with Alvin Kamara. I've got him at number 12. I'm getting him here at 14. And in my rankings, personally, I have him ahead of Bijan Robinson. So I feel great about getting him here at 2-2. Bob, thoughts on Alvin Kamara? And what is your first pick of the second round?
Kamara came out of the gates pretty high. If you actually start looking at, the last 8 games of the season, Kamara kind of starts fading a little bit, in even PPR formats. His consistency ranking kind of goes down. He doesn't have the high ceiling anymore. But the best part about Kamara is he offers such a nice floor. Now, the Saints just fired their OC. I do believe that there's going to be – I called my shot with Greg Olsen coming over, former OC for the Raiders, because he has familiarity with Derek Carr and also with Dennis Allen. So we'll see what that means for that offense. Kendre Miller is a factor. Jamal Williams is under contract. So, I'm okay with the play. He offers such a high floor at PPR that you're probably going to be good with him here. That being said, I'm probably going to swing for the fences. I'll probably be in what's the word I'm looking for? Minority in this pick. Yeah, that was the word I was looking for. The one guy I want to take, I'll save because I think he's going to slip. But here's a guy that I think over the second half of the year came electric is Rachaad White. So when you're looking at the second half of the year, the way the Bucs offense has looked, he's become an absolute, it's very rare in the NFL that you see a lot of 3-down workhorses, and that's what Rachaad White offers. His PPR, his PPR floor is so high now because he gets the targets from Baker. But the other thing I like is that there is a little uncertainty in that receiving corps. Mike Evans is a free agent. I expect him to be back, but Chris Godwin came on in the second half of the year. Baker Mayfield, of course, they need to re-sign. Cade Otton looks pretty strong too over the second half of the year. But if you're just looking at Rachaad White over the second half, he was the 9th best player in flex. So tight end, running back, wide receiver, and points per game in PPR. Top 10 player, and he's young. And I do believe that the offensive line was a problem this year running the football, but I have a feeling as long as Dave Canales comes back, they'll make improvements in the interior offensive line, and he could take another step. And I really like Rachaad White.
Yeah, I love that pick, Bobby. He's, in a PPR league especially, he has just been gold this year, and he'd probably be platinum next year. I mean, he just made a big step forward in the that Buccaneers offense really came together. Of course, we saw that last night. So I really like that pick. For me, I'm going to break the running back cycle and go with a wide receiver that I really love. There is some question marks on who he may be catching the ball from, but as far as just his wide receiver play, he's in my top 10 wide receivers, and that's DJ Moore. DJ had his statistically his best season this year. He had five games over 100 yards, and even had one game over 200 yards. 8 touchdowns on the season, just about 100 receptions, and that's playing with Justin Fields. He may be playing with Justin Fields next year. He may be playing with someone else, but he's definitely trending up. He should be a second round pick in drafts next year, and I'm happy to get him right here.
Yeah, he plays for the Bears.
The Bears.
He plays for the Bears. I'm not a fan. I will admit that I was wrong, right? I lambasted Bob all draft season about DJ Moore. Now, I will say that I was relatively correct on Justin Fields, but not as correct on DJ Moore. So, Bob, my apologies. You were right. I was wrong.
Okay. I'm just going to make sure. Can we just say – wait, I'm sorry.
Nope.
More time?
I got a clip.
I got a clip. Okay, what's the time? 16:35 into the podcast.
I got a clip, Bob. Norris.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
All right. You guys could probably each bet $1 and know where I'm going to go next. And I will give you one hint. It has nothing to do with my shirt, hat, or background.
Musgrave?
So raise your hand if you got right the fact that I'm taking Puka Nacua here.
Puka Nacua.
Yeah, and I'm going to go 230 catches between him and the guy that was drafted in the first round for this team, and I'm on Ross St. Brown. 230 catches. They're going to go over 2,500 yards, and they're going to approach 16 touchdowns.
Love that. So if this was an actual draft, then your wide receivers are absolutely elite, which is excellent on this particular team. For sake of the episode and just the ECR ADP setting, we're kind of just picking who we think is best player available at this point again, but it's going to be fun to see how some of these teams shake out. As you can see behind us here, team 10, team 11, 2 running backs, and then running back wide receiver for the other 2. So it'll be interesting to see how draft strategy comes up throughout the season. But if this was an actual draft, again, take a look here. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown is your wide receiver 1. Love that, especially in PPR. And then Puka Nacua is your wide receiver 2 now is absolutely phenomenal. Boy, Matt, I was definitely debating Puka because as you and I talked about on Sunday, I cheated and I put him and Cooper Kupp as number 13 pick. And then Puka goes off in that game. And I go, okay, Puka's ahead of Cooper Kupp as of right now. And then you pick him. So now I need to go to my next pick. And that is going to be, this might be, I don't know what kind of reaction this is going to get yet, but I have high hopes. I think, Matt, you brought it up a lot on Sunday and I appreciate it. CeeDee Lamb last year, Amon-Ra St. Brown this year, Puka Nacua as well. Being a year ahead of the pack and really buying into it, I'm going to go with Nico Collins here, who has absolutely been dominant, and not only in PPR, but in target share, air yards, yardage in general, and touchdowns. And let's face it, I mean, regardless of how the Texans end out their season in NFL terms, this team is completely turned around. They are definitely past the funk from post Deshaun Watson. CJ Stroud is absolutely the truth. He's going to get, rookie of the year in the AFC. And Nico Collins with Tank Dell, both were incredibly dominant, but Nico Collins is, I think, solidified him as that definite number 1. Didn't do a lot at Michigan, didn't do a lot with Houston over the last couple of seasons, but this year he has become that bona fide number 1 there. And in PPR leagues, I love it. Again, I'm not drafting per the team I'm on. We just happen to be taking the pick that's coming up next in order. But if I happen to land Jamar Chase and Nico Collins, I think I'd be just fine in PPR leagues. So for me, I'm going to take Nico Collins coming up next, and he fits right in line with my picks. I've got him at 15 overall there, and 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So for me, I feel like I'm getting a bit of a value according to my own personal ranks, which is important to take into consideration here. So Bob, thoughts on Nico Collins, and who do you got coming up here at 2-7?
Yeah, I like Nico. I have him in a lot of leagues this year, and it was great. The one thing I'm going to say though, he is, if you look at his consistency metrics, he is more of a high floor wide receiver too consistently. He wasn't in the top 10 when it came to wide receiver 1 finishes this year. So the only question I have is like, what happens when the Texans receiving core was very strange. Every week it seemed like somebody was hurt, and it worked out perfectly for fantasy. It was either Tank or Nico or Noah Brown, and then they all got to play, and it was great. But what happens when Tank Dell is healthy and Nico? And then you also have John Mechie, who started getting more playing time. You have the veterans like Noah Brown and Robert Woods are demanding a little bit of targets here and there. But I'll be interested to see what Nico does with Tank Dell for X amount of time. But early on, with Tank Dell coming back from injury, I think Nico gets off to a hot start. So I don't mind the pick. That being said, when going back to me, it's almost like it's hard to quit certain players. And unfortunately, this is going to sound like a homer pick, but I'm going to go Saquon Barkley. I think Barkley, there's not a lot of guys in fantasy football that offer, number 1 overall running back, fantasy seasons. And when you're getting into the middle part of the second round, now you're looking at Saquon Barkley, who's done it before. But even this year, listen, the Giants were an absolute dumpster fire. I'm not saying they weren't. 3 different starting quarterbacks, offensive line problems, and still Saquon Barkley was able to finish in the top 12 in consistency, top 12 in RB1 finishes of 15 or 16 PPR points. So he was consistently an RB1 in what it was a horrible situation. Now, granted, he is a free agent. We don't know where he'll end up. Assuming he comes back to the Giants, I just saw enough from the Giants offense over the second half of the year to have confidence that if you get Daniel Jones back right, you get the offensive line clicking, and they could just get one more piece, one elite wide receiver on the outside, I think we could take a step that we thought it would happen. And I'm going to go back to the well and say Saquon Barkley.
He will play for the Houston Texans in 2024.
Based on what's the connection?
Me.
Just inside, you're just own initial.
Yep.
Okay.
It's either I have gas or a really good gut feeling about this.
All right, cool. I like it.
Maybe both.
I'm gonna go with the former.
Honestly,
Could be both. I mean, I did have salmon for dinner. It's been a while. You never know.
Okay.
But why would Houston, with all of the young talent, not pay up a little bit for a running back, knowing that Pierce and Singletary probably aren't the long-term answer? Right? Maybe trade Pierce for some draft capital, load up on OL or DL. I mean, to me, we're shooting fish in a barrel here. Let's have some fun with it. Let's get freaky, Bob.
All right, listen. You know what, Matt? Nothing gets me going like let's get freaky coming out of your mouth, my friend. So I'm in. And honestly, I feel even better about it too. No offense to the Giants. I'd rather be on Houston. So go for it. That'd be fine with me.
I was going to say the same thing, Bob. If that actually happened, I would feel better about Saquon middle second round. And again, for those of you watching here and seeing this draft unfold, please, I know it's hard to do. It's weird how we're doing this. Please do not consider the team necessarily that's going down the way that it is. So, for example, Bob didn't just draft Gibbs and Barkley. We're just looking at the next best player available per who's available. But again, if you happen to have a team like this and ADP shakes out this way, Gibbs and Barkley on the same team is great. And now you can maybe get wide receivers later on. So really depends. But putting Saquon Barkley on a more efficient offense, such as the Texans, would be absolutely fantastic there. We'll see what happens. Derek, thoughts on Saquon there and who you got for your third pick in this round?
Yeah, definitely a risk-reward play. But yeah, I do like it, especially either if the Giants upgrade the offense, especially the offensive line and wide receiver, like Bobby said, or if he finds himself on a better squad, that's a win now squad. I think he would be a really big, have big impact both on that team and for fantasy. So yeah, I see that as a risk reward play, but middle late second round, I'm here for that. For me, I'm starting to see. I mean, you look at our draft board and look at all these wide receivers that have gone, and all of them, and you can make a case for them, being just wide receiver, one potential. And I'm seeing that we're approaching somewhat of a cliff. So I want to go with another wide receiver that I absolutely love. Young receiver. He's got a young quarterback that's very exciting. And the team as a whole is on the rise. We've talked about it a little bit already, but I'm going with Michael Pittman Jr. as my next pick.
Now, Anthony Richardson, any thoughts that you think him and Richardson are going to hit it off? Because it's not going to be the same, right? It's not Gardner Minshew. So you think him and Richardson will be a fit?
I do. I really do. Yeah, they didn't have a lot of time together at the beginning of the season, but when they did, Pittman, 8 receptions in game 1, 8 receptions in game 2, 9 receptions in game 3, with a touchdown in there, mixed in there. So yeah, they definitely had some chemistry right off the block. And I see that growing back, but yeah, that's a team on a rise. I mean, this is, what we've seen with CJ Stroud this year and what he's done with some young receivers. You could certainly make an argument that Anthony Richardson and the Colts are in that same situation with Pittman and Downs, and if they add to that in the draft or free agency, I mean, you could see Indianapolis, being following the model that Detroit's put together, and if that's what I'm seeing built, then I want a piece of that offense. And of course, Pittman is the guy that I want. So yeah, I could see him definitely being a wide receiver 1 next year. And, I would want to invest in him about this time.
Maddie, thoughts on Pittman and who's your next pick?
Well, guys, at the position that I personally rank a little bit higher, but I can't argue with what Derek has said. Right, that's his gut, that's his analysis, and I think that we'd be splitting hairs if I talked about the 3 or 4 guys that I have ahead of him, just like you and I did on Sunday, Sky. Right? It was very, very slim margins between each player. So I have no issues with the Michael Pittman selection.
Fair enough. Who you got?
I like Travis Etienne here.
Okay.
Do tell.
I think that he's one of the legit top 5 RB1s with a clear path to 90% of the touches in that offense. I think Trevor Lawrence is better than he showed at the end of the year, right? A whole bunch of injuries piled up. They're going to need to draft offensive line. I don't care what they do on defense, but if they draft offensive line, he's going to get better. Etienne will get better. He's proven he can be a PPR back, right, Bob? We love the PPR numbers. And I think that, as Derek mentioned with wide receivers and the cliff, I'm seeing the cliff start to creep forward. So I don't want to take a chance without a true RB1. So give me Travis Etienne.
Travis Etienne, 6th in PPR points per game, 6th in running back targets, 5th in receptions, but just that one receiving touchdown. I mentioned that on Sunday. 11 rushing touchdowns, though, on the 4th most carries. So, again, if we just get a few more receiving touchdowns and we keep them double-digit rushing touchdowns in what should be an elevating offense. Big questions in Jacksonville, though. I don't think there's actual question about Trevor Lawrence. I think he's fine. But can he click in that offense? And what are they going to do with their receivers? Christian Kirk missed a bunch of time. Zay Jones missed a bunch of time. Calvin Ridley was electric or obsolete, and they need to have more consistency there. Also, my only concern in the backfield is Tank Dell, who didn't do much this year, but had a lot of off-season hype from the dynasty. I'm sorry, Tank Dell, my bad. Tank Bigsby, thank you. Tank Bigsby had a lot of hype in the dynasty community. Is he going to get more work in year 2 as well? So in a PPR league, I love it, but just to throw back a little bit. Now with my last pick of the second round, and this will be my last pick of the second round before we go to the third. I have 3 or 4 players in mind right now that I want on all levels, and I'm trying to talk myself through them and decide who I want.
You know who you're going to take.
Actually, on the clock here. Do we?
You know who you're going to take.
I don't think so.
No?
Oh,
Well,
Jesus.
okay. I'll put it this way.
Matt takes off 1 week, and now all of a sudden you guys have no idea what he's going to do. The vibe's gone. There's no more quad box. Forget the music. We don't even have each other anymore.
Yeah.
You know what Sky wants
here-
to do, but he's going to pivot so he's not a homer.
All right. That makes sense.
Well,
Okay.
Okay, so here's what's interesting. There are 2 homer picks here. But then there's just like a favorite player, dominant and could get better situation, which I think I'm going to go with. So I want to go with Keenan Allen, but I personally think I can get hold on. I personally want to go with Keenan Allen here. I think though, just with the players available and how things shake out, I probably would be able to get him in the early 5th round in the early 3rd round on my way back around. So I'm not going to do that. I think there's a lot of question marks in LAC. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to fade that. Want Mike Evans, but I think I could fade him as well. I'm going to go with against my rankings from Sunday because I've given some more review here. And I'm actually going to go with Davante Adams with the Raiders. Hold on. With the Raiders. But I did make a mention on Sunday, and I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now, and I fully believe it. I think Davante Adams ends up on the Jets. And when that happens, I think he spikes. I think he's automatically, top 10 with Aaron Rodgers. But I think that also fades Garrett Wilson. So I'm going to fade Garrett Wilson here head-to-head. Although in basic ECR across the industry, Garrett Wilson is ahead of Davante Adams as they are now. But Davante Adams has proven that he's a top 10 to 12 wide receiver no matter what with anybody. And then if he ends up with Rodgers, it's only going to get better. So for me, I think I'd rather take the upside and the consistency with Davante Adams, who stays healthy and can play with any quarterback, with the upside. And then on the other side, if we were to go into the 3rd round on the back turn, either I would go running back if this was an actual team, but also I feel like pairing him with CeeDee Lamb and Davante Adams in a PPR league is magnificent. Very little question marks, which can only get better in my opinion. So I'm going to go against my rankings from Sunday, which actually have Keenan Allen and Mike Evans ahead of him. But I'm going to go with Davante Adams here with my 3rd and final pick in this mock draft here at 210. Bob, thoughts on King Adams, and what is your final pick here in the 2nd round?
There's a lot of question marks with the Raiders. We don't know what Antonio Pierce, if he's going to come back, and then what the offensive coordinator / quarterback situation is. Like, Aiden O'Connell was fine. I mean, he wasn't good. I don't think they won games because of Aiden O'Connell. I think they won games with him. That's great, but there's a huge difference. I just don't know if they plan to upgrade their OC. Do they plan to bring in someone more innovative? Do they plan to bring in a brand new quarterback? To me, there's just you're banking on some trade to the Jets, which could happen, of course. But that being said, I think there's one, when we did this in the preseason last year, I basically said, I was like, you need to figure out, justify, is there a huge drop off in a player's points per game, which leads me to my pick. It's Keenan Allen. I don't think people CeeDee Lamb, of course, Tyreek Hill, stud. These guys went in the top 3 picks. The next receiver down in points per game in PPR is Keenan Allen. He averaged 8 points more than his replacement level wide receiver 36 in a 3-receiver league. That's top 5. That's top 5 overall. Forget about position. Now, when we talk about age, we talk about the coaching change. Now, I think Jim Harbaugh, to me, in my opinion, Jim Harbaugh is the next coach of the Chargers. That's what I think is going to happen, and that's what I believe. If you look at the history of the San Francisco 49ers, shout out to Scott Gawasco and his 49ers, when Jim Harbaugh was there, they actually used a veteran, Anquan Boldin, as the primary weapon in the latter half of his time there with Colin Kaepernick. And Boldin, in age 33 and 34, was wide receiver 15 and 18 on a per-game basis. Overall, those 2 seasons, right? Anquan Boldin in his mid-30s. So the offense, and by the way, they used Boldin as a slot receiver. It just adds up again. And when we showed the age analysis earlier this offseason, we talked about there's about 11% dip in production. Well, if you do 11% dip off 21.1 PPR points per game, guess what? He's still better than A.J. Brown, still up there with Justin Jefferson on a per-game basis. And those guys are the next guys down. So after Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, Hill, I think you could still make an argument that Allen offers you top 5 wide receiver upside with Justin Herbert and potentially Jim Harbaugh as the head coach.
Absolutely agree. Everything you just said. In fact, when I picked Pittman a few picks ago, Keenan Allen was the other name that I was debating as well. So, yeah, for sure, he definitely carries that value into next year. And here at 211, that's a steal. I think. I think he's, we'll see what happens with the Chargers on the offseason, but even still, that pick is going to pay huge dividends next year. You get Keenan Allen at towards the end of the second round.
Funnest part of the draft, Derek. The turn.
Speaking of the end of the second round, yes, Here I am, and I know, Sky, we're just picking the 24 best players, but when you're picking at the ends, especially at the turn, and especially at the beginning, 1-1 and then 2-12 and 3-1. I mean, it really there's a strategy to be had there, and so it's hard for me to look past what I would do here as strategy. So what I'm gonna go off script a little bit and tell you what I would do if I was picking first and I picked McCaffrey, which I did, the first round when we did the mock the first time. This is what I would do here at the end of the second round. And what I would do after taking the best running back in football, fantasy football, I would take the best quarterback in fantasy football. I'm ripping the Band-Aid off, and I'm going with Josh Allen at 212, the number one fantasy quarterback of the season, carry it in next year. Probably going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback by the time we draft.
Whoa. Easy.
Whoa.
Next fall.
Whoa.
Easy.
Heard it here first, people.
Easy.
Wow. 49ers and Packers fans and the Giant fan. I'm over here just upset, just in general.
You heard it here first.
Man, Daniel Jones doesn't want to be hearing that.
Who?
Stuff.
Daniel Jones.
Billiam, where is he at right now? Get on the show, buddy.
Josh
All right,
Allen.
Sky, do we want to recap for the audio listeners?
Absolutely. I'm going to do that in just 1 second, but I want Derek to finish his point here.
Derek made Matt a liar, by the way. Matt said no one's drafting a quarterback in the first 2 rounds because we know what we're doing. And then Derek's like, you know what, Matt? I don't care what you want to skip a week. Fine. Right. Here's what we're doing. And I love that. I appreciate that, Derek, switching it up on us like that. That's good stuff. That's why I'm excited to be here every Tuesday with you, because I don't even know what's going to happen, and I'm a part of the show.
Now, by the way, Derek, it was gas.
It was gas.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
So,
all right. I don't think he's
good. Yeah, so we're not worried about Saquon in Houston. Derek, do me a favor, because I'm thinking it. I think we're all thinking it. You're on the turn right now, and just in the mock, you're on the turn. So you would have, in a real life situation, you would have 3-1 as well here. 2 scenarios I want to walk through, and I'm going to ask everybody this. And Jamie, I see your comment. I will absolutely recap the entire draft of the first 2 rounds for the audio, the podcast folks, and people just listening on YouTube in just 1 second. So bear with us, please. I know there's a lot of names to keep track of. I got you covered in a second. Let's finish this point here, though. You can either take McCaffrey into consideration or not, whatever, but you're on the turn here going from 2 to 3. You want Josh Allen. I don't disagree with that necessarily, end of the second round or the first pick of the third round. My question more, Derek, is who would your next pick be? Mm-hmm. And if you're in a keeper league, not a dynasty league, but a keeper league, what is your mentality when you're going back-to-back picks because the rounds now start to matter? For example, I'm in a keeper league. Last year I picked on the turn at 12, and I think it was at 10, whatever. I picked Derrick Henry and Cooper Kupp back-to-back. Now, that didn't work out, obviously, with the injuries. But I picked I picked Cooper Kupp second on purpose because I wasn't confident Derrick Henry was going to be a first-round pick. I didn't want that. I picked Derrick Henry first, Cooper Kupp second, so that next year, no matter where I land in draft order, I can keep Cooper Kupp in the second round if I want to. Now, we'll see if that turns out, but that's a strategy. So first question is, who would your second pick or your third pick be here, back-to-back with Josh Allen? And then would you take Josh Allen in the second round or third round if you had a keeper scenario going on? Because I think that's just a different mentality that I don't think is talked about enough in the industry.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it does make a difference, because I would consider, of course, coming back to that turn, which 2 players am I going to take? And then whether, just like you said, if there's implications for keeper leagues and rounds, you've got to factor that in as well, and in which order you take them. For me, I tend to not keep quarterbacks in keeper leagues. I would prefer to keep the skill position players. So in a scenario like this, I probably would take Josh Allen at the 212 if I'm taking him at the turn, and then for the 3-1, I would pick a player that I would want to invest in for the future as a keeper. So that would change my strategy there. If it's not a keeper and it's just a straight redraft, then actually I'm probably going a different way. So which one do you want first?
Yeah, no, I get it either way. Yeah, I like that a lot. And again, if you take Josh Allen in the second round or you take him in the third, if there's a player that you don't necessarily love for next year anyway, for whatever reason, say it was Keenan Allen and he's another year older. We're not sure what's going on. You had those guys back to back. You might go Keenan Allen first and then Josh Allen, just because you know you're going to want Josh Allen in the third round, barring catastrophic injury, of course. So I like that. I like that feedback.
Yeah. So yeah, I'd go a couple different ways here. So if it's just a straight redraft, I'm probably following Josh Allen with Mike Evans. So I would have McCaffrey, Allen, and Mike Evans as my first three. And I think that's a core build that you can go anywhere for the rest of the draft. You can really go any which way, and you've got a core of players who have, very nice floors and higher ceilings, all three of them. So that would probably be my strategy in a redraft. If it's a keeper, I would consider someone like maybe Olave at wide receiver, or I might just, really just try to blow up the draft board because, I've got 23 picks before it gets back to me. I might go to someone like Sam Laporta, 3-1, and just throw a bomb in the draft room and see what happens.
I like it. Mix it up. I like to hear that. Let's go retroactively here, boys. I'm going to give Jamie and everybody an opportunity to just kind of digest 24 names. I know this is a lot, folks. While I'm doing that, Matt, Bob, Derek, I would like you to look at just round 2, look at your own rankings, and then come up with a player you would probably just kick out of round 2. If this is just your board, you wouldn't even have this player in the second round. And then a player that's not on the draft board yet that you would put in there. If you were just to redraft, you would sub out, let's say, a Michael Pittman for X, right? Or something like that. So keep those in mind as I go through it here. Matt, I'll start with you. Then we'll go to Derek, and then I'll go to Bob, and I'll finish it up here as well. Once again, for everybody listening in, this is the Quad Box here on another Tuesday. We're holding it down on a second round mock draft, second round only. This is redraft PPR single quarterback, with Josh Allen being the first quarterback off the board here with Derek at the final pick of the second round. Let me throw a bunch of names at you folks, and then we will get into some of our feedback. So going back to last week, we had McCaffrey at 1, Tyreek Hill at 2, CeeDee Lamb at 3, Justin Jefferson at 4. Then we had Kyron Williams at 5, Jahmyr Gibbs at 6, Jamar Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown at 7 and 8. Then we had Devon Achane at 9, Bijan Robinson at 10, Breece Hall at 11, and A.J. Brown at 12. Coming back this evening, Matt kicked it off with Jonathan Taylor. Then we went to Alvin Kamara and Rachaad White. So on the turn there of these 8 picks, we had 6 running backs, 2 wide receivers. So again, Jonathan Taylor, Alvin Kamara, Rachaad White, first 3 picks tonight. Then we went to DJ Moore, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins. So 3 consecutive wide receivers. Then Bob went with Saquon Barkley, turned it over to Michael Pittman Jr., and then Travis Etienne at wide receiver. I went with old trusty reliable over another trusty reliable. I was debating Keenan Allen, which it sounds like most of us were with our picks there, but I went with Davante Adams instead. Keenan Allen went right after me, so I feel good about my decision there. And then Josh Allen, again, wrapping up the second round. Gentlemen, I'll give it to you here. I've got about 5 or 6 names right off the bat that I'm surprised aren't in the second round. I think they would probably go in the first 3 to 5 names of the third round. Matt, I'm going to kick it off with you first. Give me a player in the second round only that you would just take out of the second round? You wouldn't have drafted him yet. And who is a player not on the draft board yet that you would put into the second round?
Keenan Allen, show, but I don't trust his hamstring, so I want to stay away from the injury bug if I can. Now, Sky, you and I talked about it Sunday. Keenan Allen would be the ideal draft, play for 8 weeks, and deal him, right? And then take your chances with the fact that he gets hurt again. I don't know what the absence of Mike Williams and the potential and ascension of Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson will do. They also need Austin Eckler to be Austin Eckler. So I would probably get rid of Keenan Allen, and I'm going to go with my theory of I normally take a guy 1 year early, and I missed out on him in 23. My guy going into 24 is Chris Olave.
Chris Olave in the second round. I like that. Jamie agrees with you down here. Olave or Waddle in a keeper league. So Olave getting a bump from Matt into the second round and maybe fading Keenan Allen just a little bit, a couple more picks. I thought that would probably happen into the third round. That's why I skipped him at 210. They, Bob proved me otherwise and went ahead and stole him. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to do that. But maybe in your home leagues, we'll see he'll fall to the third round. So Keenan Allen out, Chris Olave in second round for Matt. Bob, same question to you. Who's out? Who's in the second round?
Well,
I'm sorry. Let's go Derek. I'll go Derek here first. I apologize. Derek, you're up next.
Yeah, wow. For me, I'm kind of zeroing in on Nico Collins. Certainly, he explodes when he does, but he also just disappears, and there's just too much for fantasy for second round. It's probably going to be my number one receiver. There's just too much variability to put that much trust in him. I like him at the third round more than the second round, so I'd probably switch him out. And the name I like the Olave pick because again, that was one that I was thinking of, but the name for me that's missing, and I don't know if we've even mentioned his name yet, is Brandon Ayuk, and he needs to be a strong consideration for a late second round pick. So I would pull out Nico Collins, and I'd find a place to stuff in either Olave, like Matt said, or Brandon Ayuk.
All right, pulling out Nico Collins. That was my pick. I got high hopes for him. I think this offense is going to be electric there. But look, putting in Brandon Ayuk as well. Of course, I'm a Niner homer, but you got the Debo factor, right? And when you put them side by side per game, they're pretty much identical. But of course, unfortunately, every season, Debo tends to miss a couple of games. So more consistency with Brandon Ayuk there. And Nico Collins had his own injuries this season there as well. So Nico out, Brandon Ayuk in the second round for Derek. And Bob, same question to you, my man. Who's out? Who's in the second round?
Are you sure you don't want to just go ahead, Sky? Because I feel like at this point we're just skipping over me. I mean, I don't know what's going on here with this team.
Yeah, no,
I get it.
Feel free,
I'm
Bob.
trying to get. No, it's fine. Yeah. I show up every time. No one. It's just fine. I get it. I'm
like, I would prefer. Yeah, I would prefer.
Just hang me up in the background in one of those jerseys. Would you guys like that? And if we just, you guys, do the whole podcast.
Yeah, anyway. Bob, I'm with you. Let's skip over you. We'll go to Sky.
Yeah. No, thank. I appreciate. No, of course you agree, Matt. Of course you agree. When you're not here, you probably agree. You're probably on a cruise somewhere on our dime. Unbelievable. Anyway, I want to shout out Jamie for his Waddle comment. I mean, what are we doing? Jamie, I question if you watch this channel, if you bring up Jalen Waddle
I wasn't going to say
second round keeper. Like, you mean Tyreek Hill's handcuff? Sure. You want to draft Tyreek Hill's handcuff in the round 2? Go for it. Trust me, I went through a wall with Jalen Waddle this year. Like, I think I need to write him a letter, like a nice letter. Like maybe like karma, like just like, hey, Jalen, you know what? We went through it together this year. You don't know who I am, but God damn it, I know who you are. Anyway, let's move on.
Maybe he'll send you a jersey you can put on your wall.
Oh, signed? And then I'll do one of those like barrel.
Oh, the like burning. Yeah, the old bear stand thing. Yeah,
just kidding. And I'll write a note and be like, thank you, Jalen. Instead of throwing the jersey in, I'll throw in a thank you note. Great. Anyway, so long story short, I actually am going to break the rules and I don't care. At this point, I waited so long. I have 3 names that I want in, 3 names I want out. Okay.
Oh, take your time, Bob, please.
Yeah, no, please. I'm going to do it really quick. Nico Collins, I think Derek hit on the head. If you look at his season, only 33% of his games were considered wide receiver 1 performances. That last year would have ranked in the top 22nd, tied for 22nd. So he doesn't offer you that wide receiver consistent number. He's a great high floor wide receiver 2, but he lacks the wide receiver 1. And I actually think Tank Dell was starting to take over a little bit before his injury. So there might be something there over the latter half of the year. Michael Pittman's the second one. The Anthony Richardson thing, I know he had a really good week 1, but the only other game Anthony Richardson finished, which, by the way, if they re-sign Gardner Minshew, you'll feel more comfortable with this whole situation. But week 4 was the only other game Anthony Richardson played 100% of the snaps. That game, he had 1 catch for 15 yards. So it seems a little bit wishy-washy for Pittman, in my opinion. And the last one will be Josh Allen. I'm not a quarterback in the second round kind of guy, but I get it. He does offer, he's the number 1 quarterback in fantasy, and I agree with that. So I understand there, but I wouldn't have taken him. The guys I would replace him are all playoff studs. Isaiah Pacheco's one. The biggest one is we're seeing with Isaiah Pacheco. He turned it on in the second half of last year, but the biggest thing is, number 1, Jerick McKinnon, he got hurt, but they already started fading him out, and Pacheco started getting third down work. On top of that, CEH is a free agent. So now you're taking CEH is gone. Jerick McKinnon might be gone. He's also in his mid-30s. Pacheco could be a 3-down back. We saw him. He's playing at a really high level, so I like him a lot. The other one is the same team, Rachaad Rice. Like, watching Rice in the playoffs, you're like, holy crap, this guy, if he could, like, watching him do it in the biggest stage as a rookie with Patrick Mahomes, and, like, you could kind of see that shift where it's Travis Kelce's he's becoming the 1B, and then 1A is Rachaad Rice. I mean, God, this kid is awesome. And the last one was Aaron Jones. Shout out to Matt. Aaron Jones, man, like, I think he's going to be the next year's Keenan Allen for me. Like, this year, I was all in on Keenan Allen. I was taking him over guys like Calvin Ridley and Amari Cooper. And I was like, yeah, but he's just so good. And I think everyone's going to overlook him because of the age, because of the injury this year. But if you watch that Cowboys game, you're like, the Packers offense is legit. Like, they next year are guys I just don't know which wide receiver to pick. You know what I mean? Like, who's going to be the number 1 receiver on that team? Because they have so many good young guys. But the one thing that is for sure, by the way, A.J. Dillon is a free agent. He'll probably be back. But, man, you could see Aaron Jones being an absolute workhorse, and I would love to get him into the second round.
Man, I love that. Bob, would you go with Aaron Jones or Dorsey Levens in his prime?
Aaron Jones is right now in my heart ahead of, like, LaDainian Tomlinson. I don't know why, but you know what? I'm just like, he's there for me. He's my postseason crush. I am on Aaron Jones.
They just went off the rails.
Yeah,
we just lost it.
Give me your keys, guys. Give me your keys. You're drunk. Let's go.
Now, of course, you mean LaDainian Tomlinson and not the real LT in Lawrence Taylor, who I know is your favorite player of all time. LT. So not even close. Can you imagine LT running the football, folks? I mean, just in his prime, just money. The real AA Ron in Green Bay. Love to see that. So shouts out to the Packers for the big dub. Matt called it. Remember, Matt, we had 3 jinx, and I'm pretty sure 3 jinx produces a W, if I remember correctly. All right, folks, I'm going to give my quick analysis, and we'll run it out here. For the third and fourth round, I know we got a couple folks wanting a quick third, maybe a quick fourth. We're going to keep it to an hour tonight. But next time we do a mock draft, I think there's a little bit less analysis as we get going here. We can blast through picks a little bit quicker. So I think next time we do it, we could do a third and a fourth round heading into the next mock draft. So
don't do it.
We are absolutely doing it.
We're always going to do as much analysis as possible. I have never.
We're doing third and fourth round, and if it's a 3-hour episode, it's a 3-hour episode. Look, Bob, I get paid by the hour here, so the longer we go, the better for me. I'm not really worried about it, so it works for me. Now, a player or two I would take out of this mix. Michael Pittman for me. Love him as a player. He's a third-round guy for me personally. Not a top 10 wide receiver in my rankings. The difference between him and Anthony Richardson and Gardner Minshew are not even close. First 3 games, wide receiver 8, not bad with Anthony Richardson. After that, 37, 22, 75, 33. And down the stretch, he was 9, 17, 14, 13, 16, 12, 9, and 10 with Gardner Minshew. So just more opportunity, less running quarterback. We know that affects wide receivers in general. So I love Michael Pittman. I would want him as my wide receiver 2 or even my wide receiver 1 if I had a stud running back or 2 to start my draft. But he would be a player I would take out of the second round. And then maybe Rachaad White. We'll see what happens with the Bucs. I know he had a great season, but their run game has been really tough for a handful of years. And he did all of this in the passing game, not the run game. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Now, a handful of players, and I'll just throw a bunch out here that I'm surprised to not see in the second round at large. Mike Evans, we already talked about. We might throw him in there. Brandon Ayuk, we talked about. We might throw him in there. Garrett Wilson with a healthy Aaron Rodgers and no Davante Adams, I think makes it into the second round. But then we also have James Cook, Aaron Jones, who we talked about, maybe Cooper Kupp, Sam Laporta, Mark Andrews, with no tight ends in the first 2 rounds. Jamie brings up a good point. No tight ends in the first 2 rounds might be the first time in years after Gronk, right? And then, of course, Travis Kelce for many, many years there. So, Stephon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, right? These are players not listed in the second round. So I think those are real big question marks for me.
What about your 49ers receivers? You got to think Purdy, if he makes it through the playoffs healthy, right? That offense, Purdy can probably get better, right? So, is there a 49ers receiver, if everything's healthy and everything looks good this offseason, let's say the 49ers make a good run, make it to the Super Bowl, Purdy plays well, is there an Ayuk, Debo? I know you're an Ayuk guy, but are these one of those 2 guys second-round picks for you?
If either of the 2 would be Ayuk. I mean, just the consistency, staying healthy. Brock Purdy led the NFL in yards per target. Nobody would guess that because you just think of the Niners as this West Coast check down. That wasn't the case. He had the most yards, and of course, most of that's yards after catch. I get it. But yards per target is a Purdy stat. So for me, that means a lot, and that's going to be Ayuk, not George Kittle, not Christian McCaffrey, not Deebo Samuel, right? All of those are around the line of scrimmage, and then those 3 are the best at their respective positions in yards after the catch. But the deeper throws, the 3rd and longs, the 2nd and longs, the need a big play after a turnover, whatever, those are all Brandon Ayuk plays. So he doesn't have the PPR upside as a Keenan Allen, Davante Adams, even Michael Pittman. But overall yardage and touchdowns in this offense, I think he does. And then just staying healthy, I think I would go Brandon Ayuk, but just by a little bit. I mean, Debo's in my top 20, probably 30 maybe, but Ayuk is more in my 24 personally. So, but there's a couple other guys like Mike Evans. Now we've seen with Baker Mayfield, him coming back, maybe Garrett Wilson if Davante doesn't go to the Jets, but I just think he will. So I've got him faded just a little bit.
Okay.
All righty, folks, we're going to get out of here in just a minute. So Jamie, anybody else you want to throw a comment into the section, feel free to let us know. Of course, again, we do have the Dynasty Diehards episodes coming up on Wednesdays, so make sure to check those guys out for your Dynasty content. We stick to the redraft side here as well. Want to give a nice comparison to Lawrence Taylor and LaDainian Tomlinson, who I would imagine cannot be more different human beings in the NFL sphere, though. So shouts out to all of our veterans.
Miss America, a lieutenant in the Air Force? Is that a thing?
It is.
You're welcome, Bob.
Learned something new today. I like it.
The more you know.
But maybe we read a little bit of news, a little bit of pop culture, mixing it with your football, maybe a little baseball stats. They're fun.
Oh, get out of here with the baseball stuff. No, thank you. It's I can't with that. You guys always pre-show. Oh yeah, blah blah blah. He's got the RBIs. I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. This is the RBI talk. Home run swinging bats, guys. This is a football podcast. Actually,
I hear you. And technically, it's RBI, just because the S is built in. But I'm not going to. Okay, I don't want to necessarily get there, folks. This has been an absolute blast every single time. I want to shout out my good friends, Matty Styles. That's Styles08 on Twitter. Derek Favret, Derek_Favret, and Bob Lamarco, Bobby Lamarco. Bob, go ahead and run us out, man. We will catch him next week on another Quad Box.
Yeah, man. Obviously, I don't know if anybody got a chance to check it out here on the audio side. We didn't do a full rundown of the 2 rounds. But you know what? Audio side people, we love you. And listen, jump over to YouTube. Check out we actually have it up on the screen. All the first 2 full rounds, every single pick. I actually love this exercise. It's definitely a good way to get you started for the 2024 year. But Dynasty people, this is a great opportunity just to hear us talking ball. Get your insights there. But we're also doing Dynasty stuff on the channel as well at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube. And make sure you jump over to razzball.com. I'm super excited. We have our Fantasy Football Awards coming out over the next few weeks. We have top 5 busts by position, top 5 steals by position as well. So make sure you jump over to razzball.com and check those out. And then check out the rankings. We're going to have we're going to have 2024 rankings starting in February because we're crazy people. So make sure you go to razzball.com. Make sure you subscribe to the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. And if you're on the go and you can't watch us, make sure you jump onto your Spotify, Apple Podcast app and download the Razzball Fantasy Podcast. Thank you once again, guys. This is the whole team. Derek Fabric, follow him at Derek_Fabric, Matthew Style08, Sky Gawasco at Sky Gawasco, and myself at Bobby Lamarco. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining. We are out of here, folks.